It was a chilly afternoon in Washington, D.C. The city streets bustled with professionals rushing between meetings, tourists admiring the historic architecture, and locals savoring a quiet moment in their favorite coffee shops. Among them was J.D. Vance, the Vice President of the United States, who had just wrapped up a long string of meetings and decided to grab a cup of coffee before heading back to his next engagement. His security detail remained outside as he stepped into a small, trendy cafe near Capitol Hill. The place had an indie vibe, exposed brick walls, shelves lined with books, and a playlist humming soft jazz in the background. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, and for a brief moment, JD felt like just another customer, blending into the crowd. He walked up to the counter, offering a polite nod to the barista behind it, a young woman with vibrant green hair, a nose ring, and an expression that shifted the moment she recognized him. Her arms crossed over her chest, and she gave him a once-over, as if confirming whether she had really just seen the Vice President of the United States standing in front of her. JD gave her a friendly smile. "Hey there, I'll just take a black coffee, please." The barista scoffed, shaking her head slightly. "Wow, you've got to be kidding me." JD raised an eyebrow. "I'm sorry." She let out a dry chuckle, glancing at the other employees behind the counter before turning back to him. I can't believe you actually walked in here." JD remained composed. "Well, I heard you guys have great coffee. That true?" A few customers nearby turned their heads, sensing tension brewing. The barista leaned forward slightly, lowering her voice, but making sure she was still loud enough for people to hear. "I don't know if you've noticed, Mr. Vance, but this cafe is a safe space. We don't exactly welcome people with your views." JD took a deep breath, already sensing where this was going. It wasn't the first time he had encountered hostility because of his political stance, but he had hoped, perhaps naively, that here he'd just be another guy grabbing a cup of coffee. "I see," he said calmly. "So, you're saying you won't serve me?" She shrugged, her lips curving into a smug smile. "I'm saying that people like you represent everything wrong with this country. You push so-called traditional values, but all you're really doing is trying to take rights away from people like me and my friends." JD nodded slowly, his hands resting casually on the counter. He wasn't angry. At least, not in the way she probably expected. What he felt, more than anything, was disappointment. "Let me ask you something," he said, keeping his voice even. "Have we met before?" The barista blinked, caught off guard by the question. "What?" "Have we met?" JD repeated. "Because you seem to know an awful lot about me, enough to judge me the second I walked in." She hesitated. "I don't have to meet you to know what you stand for." JD gave a thoughtful nod. "Interesting. You say this cafe is a safe space. Safe for who, exactly? People who think exactly like you? Because from where I'm standing, I don't see a welcoming environment. I see a place where people are only accepted if they fit a certain mold. If you want to fight against discrimination, maybe start by not practicing it yourself." The room fell uncomfortably silent. Some customers shifted in their seats. A few exchanged glances. Even the other employees behind the counters seemed unsure of how to react. The barista's confidence wavered for a brief moment, but she quickly recovered. "Look, I don't have to serve you. It's my right to refuse service." JD exhaled, nodding. "That's true. And I have no intention of forcing you to do anything." He then turned, addressing the cafe as a whole. "But I want everyone to think about something. Are we really making progress by treating each other like this? Is this the kind of world we want? One where we shut people out simply because they think differently?" A murmur spread through the cafe. Some people looked down at their drinks, uncomfortable with the confrontation. Others whispered to each other. JD took a step back, preparing to leave. "I didn't come here for a debate. I just wanted a cup of coffee." He chuckled softly. "But I guess I got something else instead." As he turned to walk out, a voice called from the back. "Wait!" JD stopped, glancing over his shoulder. The entire cafe seemed to be holding its breath. JD Vance paused, mid-step, turning back toward the counter. The barista looked surprised. She hadn't been the one who had called out. Instead, a middle-aged man sitting at one of the nearby tables had risen from his seat. He had a weathered face, a neatly pressed suit, and a laptop open in front of him. "Wait," the man repeated, clearing his throat. "I think we should all take a second here." The tension in the cafe was thick. Customers had stopped pretending not to listen. The barista shifted uncomfortably, crossing her arms. JD remained calm, his hands in his coat pockets. "And you are?" JD asked, studying the man. The man offered a small, almost apologetic smile. "David Carter. I teach political science at Georgetown." That caught JD's attention. He raised an eyebrow. "A professor?" David nodded. "That's right, and I think what just happened here is worth talking about." He turned toward the barista. "Miss, may I ask you something?" She hesitated. Sure." David gestured toward JD. "Before he walked in here, were you planning on making a political statement today?" She blinked. "I mean, no, but—" "And yet, here we are," David said. "You refuse to serve the Vice President of the United States because of what you think he stands for. And that's your right, just like it's his right to hold his beliefs." The barista scoffed. "With all due respect, I don't need a lecture on free speech." David chuckled. "That's not what I'm doing. I'm asking, do you think you made a real difference today?" The cafe was silent. She frowned. I don't know." David nodded thoughtfully. "Because here's what I see. A powerful man walked into a cafe, and instead of treating him like a customer, you saw an opportunity to reject him, not because of anything he did to you personally, but because of what you assume about him. Tell me, is that progress?" The barista hesitated. "People like him make policies that hurt people like me." JD finally spoke again. "Have I?" The barista looked up, startled. "What?" JD tilted his head. "Have I personally hurt you? Have I passed a law with the sole intention of making your life worse?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. It's not just you. It's what people like you represent." JD sighed. "That's the problem, isn't it? We don't see each other as people anymore. We see labels, titles, political parties. We've stopped having conversations and started treating each other like enemies." David nodded in agreement. "We teach students to think critically, to debate, to challenge ideas, but we also teach them that shutting someone out because they think differently doesn't lead to change. It leads to more division." The barista's face softened. For the first time, she seemed to actually consider their words instead of simply reacting. JD offered a small, knowing smile. "Look, I don't expect you to agree with me, but I do hope that next time, when someone walks through that door, you see them as a person first and a political opponent second." The barista swallowed, then slowly nodded. I hear you." JD glanced at the counter. "So how about that coffee?" The barista hesitated for a moment before finally sighing, a small smile tugging at her lips. "Black coffee, right?" JD grinned. "That's right." As she turned to make the order, the cafe slowly returned to normal. Conversations picked up again, customers relaxed, the tension had lifted. David chuckled, shaking his head as he sat back down. "Well, that was something." JD took a seat at a nearby table, waiting for his coffee. "Yeah, but maybe it was worth it." The cafe doors opened, letting in a new rush of customers. Life moved on. But for everyone in that room, something had shifted. The cafe had returned to a steady hum of conversation, but there was a different energy in the air now, something quieter, more thoughtful. JD Vance sat at his table, fingers wrapped around the cup of coffee that had, just moments ago, been denied to him. He took a sip, letting the warmth settle in. Across the room, David Carter was typing something on his laptop, occasionally glancing up as if making sure he wasn't imagining what had just happened. The barista, still behind the counter, was wiping down an already clean surface, clearly lost in thought. Every so often, she would glance at JD, as if seeing him differently now. Finally, she exhaled and walked over. She hesitated, shifting on her feet. I wanted to say thanks for not blowing up back there. Jae looked up, offering a small smile. You don't owe me anything. She shook her head. No, I do. I judged you before I even knew you. And honestly, if I had just served you and let you walk out, I probably wouldn't have thought twice about it. But now I have to think about it. JD took another sip of his coffee, then set the cup down. That's all I could ask for. David, still watching, leaned back in his chair with a knowing smirk. Funny how things turn out, huh? JD chuckled. Yeah, people assume conversations like this don't change anything. But I think they do. The barista hesitated before speaking again. I still don't agree with you on, well, probably a lot of things, Jae nodded, and I don't expect you to. But if we can at least hear each other, that's a start, right? She smiled, just a little. Yeah, I guess it is. A customer walked up to the counter, breaking the moment. The barista gave JD one last nod before stepping away to take the order. JD leaned back in his chair, feeling the weight of the moment settle. He knew that a single conversation wouldn't fix the deep divides in the country. But maybe, just maybe, it could remind people that those divides didn't have to define them. As he finished his coffee and stood to leave, David called out, Hey, Mr. Vice President. JD turned. Yeah, David smirked. Next time, coffee's on me. JD grinned. I'll hold you to that. And with that, he stepped out of the cafe, the cool air hitting his face as he walked into the city, leaving behind not just an empty cup, but a conversation that just might have mattered more than anyone realized. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this story has touched your heart and given you a moment to reflect on the power of our choices, kindness, and the unexpected ways that people can come together. JD Vance, like many of us, faces challenges and difficult moments, but it's how we respond to those moments that truly defines us. Remember, no matter what role we play in life, we always have the opportunity to make a positive difference. If you found this story inspiring, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new video. Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think about this powerful moment. And as always, thank you for being a part of our incredible community. Until next time, take care and stay kind.